All right, gonna let them in. Hi, everybody, welcome.
Hi there, Susan.
Hi, Buzz, how are you doing?
Good. How about you?
Doing good.
Good. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Buzz.
How's life down in the Southland?
Good, good. Everything's fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
You're incognito.
Me?
Yeah,
Huh. More cognito?
there you go.
Yeah. Me cognito.
Welcome, everyone. We're gonna wait a few more minutes, maybe 4 or 5 after, to let more people join before we begin. Thanks for coming. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, or you can speak up, or whatever you feel like doing. It's a pretty laid back session. Give folks a couple more minutes. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our July SJCA July Scoop. Today we've got Emelie Frojen, our brand new, joining us last month. She's our Climate and Energy Program Associate, and she'll be working really closely with Mike Eisenfeld, who's also on the meeting today in New Mexico, as well as Colorado oil and gas issues. Emelie came to us directly from Lewis and Clark College, where she got her law degree in environmental and natural resource law, specializing in federal Indian law. So we're really excited to have Emelie. She's coming up to speed extremely quickly, very passionate about the environment. And I'll let Emelie take it from here.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Susan, you stole my introduction there. I'm just gonna share my slide here. Make sure everyone can see it. Can you all see that? Yeah, good. So as Susan mentioned, my name is Emelie, and I'm really excited to have started here at San Juan Citizens Alliance. And today I want to talk to you all about kind of what we see as a just transition here in the Four Corners region. Great, so a little bit about our organization. We advocate for clean air, pure water, and healthy lands, which are the foundation of resilient communities, ecosystems, and economies in the San Juan Basin. And I work in the energy and climate program here, which is what my talk will be surrounding. But if you've attended some of our past groups, you'll know we also have a water, public lands, and wildlife program. So a brief roadmap for what I'll be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about what is a just transition and what are some of the goals of it, talk about the past, present, and future of energy production here in the San Juan Basin, and then what does an equitable energy transition look like here in our community. So a just transition is a fair and equitable process of moving towards a post-carbon society. The process creates a more equitable relationship with the energy economy, its employees, and their communities. The term was developed in the 1980s and came out of the trade union movement. It arose when new regulations on air and water pollution resulted in the closure of several industries. And the idea was that we need to phase out harmful industries while at the same time providing just pathways for workers in those industries to transition to other jobs and careers. And the definition of just transition has adapted since to include and represent a whole host of strategies to transition communities and build resilient economies that provide sustainable livelihoods, equitable governments, and ecological resilience. At its best, the concept of a just transition applies an intersectional environmental justice lens to the shifting energy economy and the communities impacted by it. So what are some of the goals of a just transition? The movement emphasizes bottom-up organizing and centers on the voices of those most impacted in shared community leadership. Some goals that a just transition encompasses are an equitable redistribution of resources and power. A just transition must actively work against and transform current and historic inequities. And it works to reclaim capital and resources for the communities where these inequities are the most pervasive. It's also an inclusive and collaborative process and requires proactive economic investment, both in community capital and career pathways. It also creates meaningful work by creating opportunities for people to learn, grow, and develop, and adds training, education programs to equip workers with the skills they need for careers in other sustainable industries. It also guarantees pathways to high quality and meaningful careers. And it provides policies to ensure equitable access to jobs. So why do we need a just transition? Without a just transition, environmental injustice between energy production and benefits will persist. For example, many residents of the Navajo Nation still lack electricity in their homes, but for decades, the nation's coal has lit up places like the Las Vegas Strip. And we need a new energy economy to prioritize our local communities. We needed to build long-lasting resilient communities, redistribute resources and power to local communities, and create new relationships of power for the future. So the San Juan Basin's past, coal production has played a significant role in the economic development of the San Juan Basin and has oil and natural gas. Currently, New Mexico is the third largest oil producing state after Texas and North Dakota. and is one of only 3 states that saw an increase in production from 2019 to 2020. However, also in 2020, wind energy accounted for 21% of our large-scale utility electric generation. And by the end of the year, it also had 2,500 megawatts of wind power electricity generating capacity. Solar is also on the rise in the Four Corners region. And while coal and other extractive energy industries have done a lot for our region in the past, but locally, nationally, and globally, the demand for extractive energy production is decreasing. And it's in our best interest to get ahead of the curve and transition to clean energy. So presently, we have some current barriers to a just transition here in the San Juan Basin. One of them is the Four Corners Power Plant, which spews the climate equivalent of 11 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. We are in ongoing litigation around this power plant and are actively working to close and equitably transition it. There's also the San Juan Generating Station complex. So the San Juan Generating Station and the San Juan Mine is New Mexico's single largest polluter, and it actively harms the health of the surrounding communities and the environment. The coal industry here is struggling across the nation. Utilities are moving towards cheaper, cleaner renewables. And with that, the San Juan Mine, which sells its coal solely to San Juan Generating Station, is supposed to close this summer. And with that, the San Juan Generating Station is also scheduled to shut down in 2022. However, there are some misled companies that are trying to keep the plant open through unproven carbon capture technology. And we're fighting to ensure the closure and a just transition to renewable energy. Recently, the largest owner of San Juan Generating Station, which is the Public Service Company of New Mexico, it's referred to as PNM, has backed the Energy Transition Act and committed to closing San Juan Generating Station as part of its transition towards clean energy. However, a company called Enchant, along with the city of Farmington, is trying to continue the life of the San Juan Generating Station through, as I mentioned earlier, carbon capture and sequestration. The original proposal was to run the coal plant while capturing a percentage of the carbon. However, they recently stated that they wish to run the plant without carbon capture and sequestration until 2024. Carbon capture and sequestration is an unproven technology and hasn't really ever been done at this scale and with a decades-old power plant. I heard a really good analogy for it today, which is when your bathtub is overflowing, you first shut off the faucet rather than spending time mopping up the puddle on the floor. So carbon capture and sequestration does not remove carbon from the atmosphere, but rather it just captures a portion of the carbon emissions produced by the continual running of the coal power plant. And it really just delays action towards clean energy. The current status of the carbon capture project and Enchant's project is in the front end engineering and design phase, sometimes referred to as a FEED study, which is looking into the feasibility of the project. And while both Enchant and the city of Farmington have been acting like the project has a green light, it's really nowhere near that. There's been no National Environmental Policy Act process, which is the federal environmental evaluation requirement. And it possesses none of the necessary permits for the operation. And their funding currently is solely limited to the FEED study with no actual funding for the projects. It recently shifted from, it couldn't get investors for the project. So now it's shifted to a loan-based project through a grant-based project through the Department of Energy. It's behind on its schedule. The feasibility study was supposed to be completed in January of this year, and it's been pushed back to 2023. So we won't even know if the project will be viable until 2023. The project also doesn't have any secured power lines to transfer the power it hopes to generate, and it doesn't have any of the pore space ownership to inject the carbon into. So we're actively working to shut down this project, along with, because it does not really fall behind a just transition in our region. And on top of all this chaos, some of you may have heard at the end of June, a 400-foot long and 4-story tall cooling tower collapsed at the San Juan Generating Station. And so the facilities there are literally falling apart. And so there are some alternative proposals also flying around for energy production that we are working on changing the narrative around in this area. One of them is the idea of selling liquefied natural gas to other coal-reliant countries, which you may have heard. So that would be selling our natural gas to places like India and China that are reliant on coal. And this is really not a long-term solution. It's not community-based. And it really blindly relies on the fact that the gas will replace coal rather than adding to it. There's no assurance that countries will buy it. And realistically, we need to be lowering our emissions rather than increasing our emissions to export energy elsewhere. You also may have heard of hydrogen proposals in the area, which is another barrier that we kind of see to adjust transition in the Four Corners region. Hydrogen is the process of splitting water atoms to create hydrogen through which can be used as an energy source. However, the process of splitting atoms is extremely energy intensive. And there's kind of three types to hydrogen production, or three different ways you can do it. There's green hydrogen, which is when you use renewable energy to split the atoms. And then there's gray hydrogen, which is when you use fossil fuels to split the atoms. And finally, the more popular one that's been thrown around this year in the San Juan Basin is blue hydrogen, which is when you use fossil fuels to split water atoms to create hydrogen, but then capture the carbon from the fossil fuels in that process. But realistically, none of these forms of hydrogen are sustainable here. It's an incredibly inefficient at its current energy source. It's an inefficient process. And it's really not practical for our area because it's extremely water intensive, almost more so than coal. So as we all know, it's been a pretty dry year, and we don't really need to be investing in water intensive energy production. So the path forward here is renewable projects, and specifically solar projects. So the future of our area we have the capacity to become a major renewable energy producer, first and foremost for our communities, but also an exporter to other areas in the Southwest. In 2019, the New Mexico State Legislature passed the Energy Transition Act, which sets a statewide renewable energy standards with the end goal of a carbon zero resources by 2050. The act creates a variety of pathways to get there. It involved a financing mechanism called securitization that can help some of the investors in the San Juan Generating Station recover past investments, and the act will provide $40 million to relief workers, local communities, and tribes in San Juan County, where New Mexico's remaining coal-fired facilities are located. The act also generates millions of dollars of replacement power, including renewables, to be developed in San Juan County. The development of these replacement powers can restore the tax base for the community and its schools after the San Juan Generating System closes, and it can provide substantial economic activity for years to come. There are also energy transition components in the potential and proposed national infrastructure bill that has been going around Congress. And some of the components of that bill, which are all up in the air for the final draft, but include an equitable growth in coal impacted communities by funding reclamation. And it has a component for a dislocated worker program, which can include sector-based training, income support, and partnerships between education institutions and unions. There's also in that bill a new rural partnership program, which helps communities navigate the federal programs available to them. So there are also a multitude of solar projects proposed in the San Juan Basin that we at San Juan Citizens Alliance are pushing to get sited, permitted, and running as soon as possible. So what does an equitable and just transition look like for our communities? A sole focus on coal and extractive industry production is not resilient or forward-thinking, though neither is an entirely energy-focused economy. We want to invest both in renewable energy, but also other opportunities to create economic diversity. And we want this because a heavy reliance on extractive energy production can impede long-term economic growth. This is called the paradox of plenty, or the resource curse. And it's where communities that are dependent on extraction lag behind in other communities that compared to other communities on key economic measures. And this is because extractive jobs require little formal education and create little investment in the communities. The boom and bust cycle related to commodity prices can lead to lack of local investment by both private and public entities due to the uncertainties in the boom and bust cycle. Additionally, the industry leads to environmental degradation, which deters recreation and tourism. So a successful transition in the San Juan Basin will require social, economic, and political investment. So first, I want to talk about social investment and what that looks like, though keep in mind there's a fair amount of overlap between this and economic investment. So one of the areas that social investment must be in is in jobs. This can look like retraining and educational opportunities. Many coal miners and power plant workers have the skills that are needed in a variety of other industries. And so a just transition process would help displaced workers match their skills and interests to other occupations and industries and obtain the training they need to be successful. And this is possible. Really, employment data from the US Department of Energy has shown for each job lost in coal, it's been replaced by a job in the renewable industry, and wind and solar industries already employ 3 times more people than the coal industry. And that number is really only growing. Additionally, some of the most rapid job growth has been in solar, which increased its employment by an annual average of 20% more for the past several years. Secondly, we need reclamation. Reclamation is an important source of employment for displaced mine and power plant workers. Reclamation can create somewhere between 5 and 33 jobs per $1 million invested. And to give you a scale of that, New Mexico coal mines currently have hundreds of millions of dollars invested in reclamation liability. Additionally, reclamation improves community health by eliminating emissions and reducing pollution. It also improves the environmental quality of the area, which increases property values. And there's an added bonus that reclaimed areas make great solar sites because they already tend to be fairly remote. They don't require extensive environmental impact clearances, and they already have the existing roads and other infrastructures, in our case, power transmission and things like that, to create great solar sites. This has been done in places like Taos County and is a really great way to take these reclaimed areas and repurpose them for solar development. So there are some other economic investments that can be done in San Juan County to diversify the economy. On top of what I talked about on the last side is increasing the tourism. The Four Corners region is both immensely beautiful and culturally rich with an abundance of recreational opportunities. And tourism is a great economic base because it draws in new spending into a regional economy, and promoting regional tourism is essential to diverse economic growth. But with coal plants in the air, spewing toxics in the air, it's harder to increase tourism. So it's a good coupling, and by decreasing coal pollution, I think tourism will increase. And there's also investing in solar power and storage. The current transmission capacity plus the abundant amount of sunshine in the San Juan Basin positions itself to be a major producer and exporter of solar electricity. San Juan County is an excellent site for commercial scale solar energy storage facility. And while there are other Western areas that have solar resources that are as good as those in the Four Corners, none of them have the transmission infrastructure needed to cost effectively deliver power to multiple out-of-state utilities that we have. There are places in the Southwest with increasing demand for clean energy imports like Arizona and California. Additionally, commercial scale power, solar power industries provide a wider range of jobs requiring various degrees and expertise and employment growth opportunities. Finally, solar development on rural area land increases property values and thus state and local property tax revenue. Finally, there needs to be a political investment in order to have a successful just transition in the San Juan Basin. In order for this to be successful, impacted communities need to not only have a seat at the table, but to have decision-making power to move forward. So in summation, the Four Corners region needs to transition its extractive energy-based economy into one that is diverse and resilient to change. It should do that by investing in economic, social, and political capital into its communities as it divests from coal. And with a just transition, the San Juan Basin can position itself for a prosperous future. I appreciate you all spending time, and I'm looking forward to coming to this presentation and looking forward to doing a bit of Q&A, and we really can't do our work without you. So thank you. Does anyone
Thank
have
you,
any
Emelie.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, if there's any questions, you can put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. And Mike's here as well to answer any questions you may have.
I'm happy also to answer other questions related to my work, oh, sorry. Buzz, is that you raising your hand?
That's me. Don't let me interrupt you.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just saying I can answer other questions that you have about our program that's beyond an energy transition.
It seems that a huge problem in the future will be the storage of electricity in batteries, which is, you know, a nascent industry, but it is certainly not up to the task. So in the transition to a green energy economy, what are the options? What are the most ecologically sound options to provide energy when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing, in the absence of really efficient battery storage?
Yeah. Well, I think a component of that, which is more at a federal level and a little bit outside of the local level, is having utilities not be as barred by state lines. So this is not something that we're directly working on, or that it's more federal, but we talked about this a lot in law school, where a big issue is the sun is shining somewhere and we can transport that power. So having a lot of utilities stop at certain state lines can create an issue. So more energy sharing across state lines is probably the most sound option while we're working on storage technology. So while the sun might not be, it might be cloudy in Farmington, it's probably sunny somewhere in Arizona just over the cider, and sharing power between utilities is, so that's a more federal policy based change, but that's one way you can do it.
Okay.
Mike, do you have anything to add there?
Not I. Mike?
Yeah, hey Buzz. Yeah, so in our sort of discussion about you know, what will replace the coal-fired power plants in the region, you know, we were definitely very cognizant of the stranded assets, the transmission lines, which are really kind of hard to come by in the state of New Mexico, existing transmission, and then the substations, and then this idea about the area maybe becoming an energy storage hub. And some of the technologies out there are lithium-ion, thermal, compressed air energy storage. There's also some discussion about reallocation of some of the resources that previously went to the coal-fired power plants. Like coal-fired power plants use an immense amount of water, and that water, there's a couple of proposed pump storage hydropower projects. So part of the challenge that Emelie and Mark Pearson, our executive director, and myself have with our energy program is, you know, constantly looking at the technologies and trying to understand, for example, you know, what are the best energy storage technologies, and then also things like when people start mentioning helium, or they're mentioning you know, like certified natural gas, or saying, no, we can do natural gas and we can certify it, and it's going to be from clean sources. And so for us, it's always sort of, I believe, a good amount of skepticism. And then, you know, we dig in and we start trying to understand the technical aspects, because that's pretty critical for us to be able to know what our analysis is. And so we'll definitely be working more kind of on the energy storage, but there's the capacity for the Four Corners area to be a real significant energy storage hub. And the amount of solar that's proposed here is double the amount of electricity derived from the San Juan generating station right now. And a lot of utilities just don't want it from coal anymore. It's too expensive.
Thank you.
Sure.
Gordon, are you asking a question? I think you're muted. Oh.
Yeah, my question comes back to the fact that City of Farmington is spending millions on legal fees for Enchant Energy because of a one-sided agreement they have. Can we somehow start a public campaign which says, if we put those millions into energy storage, the energy out there is available to be stored, and it's cheap and it's dispatchable. And so what we need, I think, is a public campaign which says, right in front of our own eyes, we're wasting money that should be going into other resources rather than paying for lawyers to renegotiate contracts on a facility that's never going to get up and running.
Yeah, I agree.
So when I hear the word decouple the legal payments from the Enchant, I don't know exactly what that means. So if I call my city councilor, I want to know exactly what I'm asking for specifically. And I want to be able to write letters to constituents that live in her district or that kind of thing. So I think you could help us by having specific ways that City of Farmington could spend its money better, that I could write to fellow citizens and the city councilors and others that would say, if you would take these steps right now, this money would be useful and it would produce storage of clean energy. So I would like that help if possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we are working, I've been working with our new comms person as well as developing a plan and a campaign for the City of Farmington and Enchant. And we will be in touch with sending out those actions and that exact messaging that you can kind of just have ready to go when you write those letters.
Great.
Yeah. Ralph, I see you raised your hand. Oh, you're muted, Ralph.
I second Gordon's idea because it's amazing how much money we throw away in this country on things such as what they're trying to do to promote Enchant. But my question has to do with the fifth fuel, energy efficiency. If fossil fuels and nuclear and hydro and renewables are the four fuels that we think of for energy, electricity generation, a fifth fuel that often gets overlooked are negawatts. And I think perhaps some of you have heard that term. And I'm just wondering about what the potential that has been looked at for San Juan County for investing in improvements in the use of energy within the community that could, knock down the requirements. However, I did hear Mike's answer to say that we currently have proposals for more renewable energy generation than what is currently being supplied by fossil fuels. So maybe that's not a concern, but it's always, my question is mostly a comment. It's always helpful to reduce the energy use because you're reducing the energy dollars that your community members have to spend. Anyhow, that's my question about maybe it was what is the potential for energy efficiency being, and then I also thought about San Juan Community College, if there could be a program there, if there isn't already, for putting people to work on doing audits and doing installations of energy efficiency measures as part of the just transition.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with energy efficiency in Farmington and in New Mexico, but maybe Mike, you might know more than I do as I found that.
Yeah, so with the Energy Transition Act, like we wanted kind of this area to sort of be identified as a region that could start the discussion about the externalities associated with the really high costs of continuing to produce electricity from coal. And so the efficiency aspect, I think, has often not been a major part of the discussion. And, that our community, I think, is used to sort of not considering the externalities in the form of air pollution, in the form of the high costs of coal. Coal is like twice the cost right now of renewable energy. And our community continues to sort of ignore, in my opinion, the benefits of renewable energy and transitioning, and keeps talking about how we're going to fall back on what we've always done, which is coal-fired power plants and oil and gas and perhaps uranium. And generally, there are opportunities, I believe, for San Juan College to revamp their energy. They have a school of energy, and a few years ago, they were trying to train coal workers who were going to be displaced to be oil and gas workers, and that failed. And so now there are some initiatives that are associated with the Energy Transition Act to try to bring money into community institutions to allow education, job retraining, and also formulate sort of like what that transition mechanisms are for industrial applications. The solar capacity that's being talked about here would provide over 1,500 construction jobs, and there wouldn't be as many long-term jobs as some of the other energy projects, but I think it needs to be looked at more comprehensively as to kind of like what it brings to the area, because for many years, the San Juan Basin was considered basically like an energy sacrifice zone where the brown cloud was every day. And I think it was a real deterrent for us for economic development, diversification. And we hear our community leaders talk about recreation, tourism, retirement. I believe that energy efficiency should also be part of that discussion. So thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, and I'll just add, energy efficiency and water efficiency is that we have to address our energy demand as well as our water demand. Drought is going to be with us from here on out, regrettably. And so if we can make that investment there, then you could almost say, okay, it's going to take less energy for pumping water if the water demand is down. I'll leave it go at that. But Mike, Mike and Emelie, I think you have the idea, and hopefully that can be a stronger consideration. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll also add to what just Mike mentioned, that, a common complaint or kind of an issue brought up is that solar doesn't have a lot of like long-term jobs, and some of them are with construction, but realistically, those also the coal industry is not adding long-term jobs, and with or without solar, those jobs are going away. So it's not like it's really being if we don't do solar, we're going to have tons of jobs from the coal industry still here. So.
Yeah, like the Enchant guys keep talking about how there's 1,500 jobs at San Juan Generating Station and San Juan Mine, and we would quantify that as probably about 350. And so this is an industry that's losing the capacity to provide jobs rapidly.
Gloria, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, I don't know everybody on the call, but I'm a lifelong resident of San Juan County. And I think that I agree with water being so important. And today I was in a service club meeting, Kiwanis Club meeting, where the Four Corners Economic Development guy was speaking. And he neglected to even mention outdoor recreation and tourism as one of the goals of Four Corners Economic Development. So it was somebody raised their hand and asked about that. And his response was that that's more of a city of Farmington thing. Company in town, not being utilized, and really, I think that it's being utilized by the public, but our leaders do not seem to be supporting it. I mean, I can't say that they're not supporting it because they have provided, you know, a lease agreement to the company, and you know, their Convention and Visitors Bureau promotes it. I don't think I've seen the Chamber of Commerce promoting it, but perhaps they're not a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I'm not sure. But when I asked if any of our city councilors or county commissioners or anybody had taken rides to see the city and the area from another perspective on the rivers, San Juan, Animas, no, they had not. And I just feel like diversification here is a word that's used a lot. And what about tourism and outdoor recreation and all the beauty we have here? And I just feel like the main focus is keeping fossil fuels and not really diversifying. And I just think that as individuals, I think Gordon and MP Schildmeyer and Mike and others have stressed the importance of, I mean, I'm trying to attend more and more of these things, these informative sessions like this one today, and listening in on the legislative sessions that Mike's been presenting a panel member on with the Water and Natural Resources Legislative Interim Committee and Indian Affairs Committees and things like that that are very important for water and for energy and economic development, et cetera. And so if, as individuals, if we could take their advice and attend these meetings around the county and in our cities, and take advantage of the 3 minutes that you can speak at these, but maybe get together with these people who are in the know and who can help with a small informative piece to present, and so that people in the community can hear our concerns as well. And I just think it's so important. And more recently, I'm on the River Reach Foundation and have been on the board for quite some time. And we had New Mexico True and the New Mexico Tourism Department with the state come and bring 4 of their contract people or their employees here. So we gave them a tour of our river trail system, and they stayed overnight and they ate at our, locally owned restaurants, and we gave them a raft ride on the San Juan River. And my thought and their knowledge of the 3 rivers, they didn't know that we had these amenities here, and they were very impressed by the outdoor opportunities here and the trail systems and the rivers and the opportunities for outdoor recreation and tourism. And they were amazed at the amount of water that we have here. And so in that presentation today of Four Corners Economic Development, I took him aside and I just said, you know, those people from New Mexico Tourism were from 4 different states, or, you know, the contract company, the events, they came to help us with our Riverfest event, our annual event. And they were amazed at the water, and they said, we don't have this even in Santa Fe. The person from Santa Fe, the Santa Fe River runs through Santa Fe, and it's a small creek, you know. And I just think that as water becomes more of a shortage, and it's used so much, when I took a tour of Four Corners Power Plant, there's so much water used. I wish I could take a tour of San Juan Generating Station too. I mean, it's just devastation out there, and the use of our water. And I see people, and I told the man after the presentation today, I said, people are going to try to start moving to areas that actually have water, you know, and we're going to be in our state or our Four Corners, one of those areas, I believe. And I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
No, Gloria, I agree. Those are all great points. And that's pretty wild that the creation opportunities were not a part of the conversation today. And that's something that's increasing, being a big part of the conversation and our economy moving forward. MP, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. And thank you, Emily, for your presentation. I've enjoyed it. As a political activist, I was very glad to see that you included political activity, even though it was at the end of the presentation. But I think that's the way most people think of politics. But it's one of the most powerful areas that a local, either organization or area such as a county or a city has to bring about change. And in San Juan County, in the various cities, with the exception of Aztec, all of the administrations, the mayors, the council, the commissioners, with the exception of 1 or 2, happen to be Republicans. And they have always wanted us to continue using fossil fuel in oil and gas and coal. They struggled mightily against the passage of the Energy Transition Act. It took years to get that done. And if you talk to most anybody in the area about the Energy Transition Act, oh, it's a terrible thing, it's never going to work, blah, blah, blah. But of course, they really don't know about the provisions, such as Mike was talking about, with the $40 million or you were to be available through the Energy Transition Act to help educate and train people for other professions. But so the point of my rambling is that I would urge all of us to participate in some way in your local politics, even if that just means contributing to a local party or something that you want to support, or helping to canvass when election time comes about. And election is coming next year, and it's midterms, and usually when the Democrats are in power, they lose in the midterms, and we don't want that to happen. And also, all of the state representatives are up for re-election, and we need to keep Anthony Allison elected here in District 4. And if we could just get some people to run for office, it's really kind of fun. I did it once, and although I didn't succeed, I really learned a lot about the area that I live in, actually, and had an opportunity to meet a lot of different people and try to convince them of some things. Anyway, I would just urge you to participate however you can, help register people to vote, be sure, take people to the polls, do something, and support those of us who are maybe going to go talk to the city of Farmington and the San Juan County Commission at the 3 minutes that we all get that Gloria was talking about. That can be powerful. You get a speaker up there and they have to listen to you for 3 minutes, so you can talk about anything you want. So I'd like to see that happen, and we're working on getting that started or restarted. So thanks. And don't think of politics as a bad thing. It's the art and science of governing. And we need to do that. We need to do a much better job than we have been.
Yeah, thanks, MP. I agree. It's really important to be involved politically and work really hard to get those folks who have been kept out and disenfranchised by our political system, get those seats at the table and actually have that decision-making power. So I agree that that's a really important part to be working on, and not an afterthought, I promise. So I think next with their hands raised, we have Dominic, and then followed by Gordon.
Hi, yeah, I'm Dominic May. I'm actually up in Durango. But first of all, I wanted to say I'm super thankful that you're thinking about this. Equity and energy is, I think, a burgeoning thought process. So really glad that you're looking at this. I had a couple things I wanted to ask about, starting with storage, kind of a comment and then a question on that as well. And it also touches on energy efficiency. They kind of asked if that's going on down there. And I think one of the things that we're seeing, especially because the renewable penetration is getting so high, is that managed demand is almost as important, if not more important, than efficiency. So to me, like, one of the questions I had there is what I think there's a horizon of islands, basically, of technology and demand management, where you have equity issues forming around those who can get all of the smart tech as solar penetrates and demand rates increase because of the intermittency. So I think one of the things that I'm curious about is if anybody's there down in the Farmington area thinking about using things like managed energy, for example, people's hot water, their heat in their house, their electric vehicles as storage, which kind of comes with efficiency. And then additionally, if you're looking at maybe targeting low income groups or trying to prevent those islands of people getting kind of cut out as the affluent adopt these new technologies.
Yeah, I'm maybe Mike, you may know more about this than me being in Farmington, but I'm not quite sure on who is kind of leading that down there.
We have some solar installers and some people who were part of the San Juan College Renewable Energy Program who are kind of thinking about that stuff, and it would be great resources. I'm not sure that the Farmington electric utility system, I know that they have like installed smart meters and stuff like that, but I think that's maybe a little bit beyond like my technical aptitude, but I would be happy to kind of like look into it to get a sense. I mean, I think in general, these are the sort of things that, we kind of as an organization, as advocates, are trying to raise. And my particular experience is that often, it's not always the first thing that the political bodies or the utilities are thinking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for checking on that. I'd love to, follow up if possible. And then I did have one question on the political front that's actually very specific. I'm always looking for ways to do more equity, especially around like electric vehicles and the burgeoning adoption of those. I'm wondering if you have any kind of lobbying going on or any kind of thoughts around two special components of that. One being the taxes. Both federal and state taxes have traditionally come in the form of a tax credit, and they still come as that if we're buying a vehicle. And I'd really love to see pressure starting to build for those switching to owning a vehicle, annual tax rebate or credit, just because they really benefit people who can afford a new car today. And that's just a glaring inequity, I think. And then the other one, I'd love to see if people down there considering certain EV charging rate inequities. For example, kicking in a dwell charge right off the bat, like for example, charging a per minute fee actually punishes people with less expensive electric vehicles that charge at a slower rate and thus is regressive. So at any rate, those are a couple things. I'm just kind of curious if people are lobbying any specific things or if it's kind of more this high level stuff.
Yeah, we were at the Public Utility Commission meeting yesterday in Farmington, and evidently there's 6 charging stations in Farmington, and they're all slow. And so I think it's kind of a little bit orchestrated against, kind of the success, in my opinion. And then also we, San Juan Citizens Alliance, one of the things that we do, for better or worse, is that we participate in the legislative session in Santa Fe. And so we are thinking that one of the bills that's going to come up in the 2022 session will have to do with electric vehicles and clean fuels. And so we'll definitely sort of be active in that. And I would just say that, while I'm talking away. I just, I'm thrilled that Emelie's with us. We're trying to build more capacity for our work on what I believe are, very complicated issues, and filling a niche in our community. And one of those things is sort of like that, we've intervened in cases in Arizona and New Mexico, that some of these things sort of cross over between southwestern Colorado and northwestern New Mexico, and all the jurisdictional issues that we deal with living here in this community, these communities. So anyway, we're really trying our best, but we're all about public participation, public involvement. We welcome any sort of discussion or anything that y'all want us to do, and but that these things are sort of all over the place, and the focus hopefully will be on things like electric vehicles and renewable energy opportunities and the enhancement that brings. I mentioned a couple of reports that we that we commissioned, and one of the main things was quality of life. And so that's, I think, real important, and why a lot of us live here. But yeah, definitely we're open to sort of, if we don't know the answer, we will try to figure it out.
Yeah, Dominic, I put my email in the chat, and if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to keep you in the loop as we get closer to the New Mexico legislative session on some of those potential legislation on electric vehicles, as we hear about them or as they come to the surface.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Okay, Gordon.
Yes, thank you, MP and Mike. There is actually a tradition of change through the political process here in Farmington. We have curbside recycling because we got 50 or 60 people to step up. We have net metering for the same reason. But what is needed in order to be effective as a grassroots lobbyist is the best, latest information. So for instance, if I think there should be some information going out about energy storage, its availability, its necessity, and how, if the utilities with money, like Farmington Electric Utility, were to spend money on storage right now, they would save money on future generation that they say they're going to need. And so I think if you can tap into your expertise in a variety of areas, and that might include utilities across Colorado too, so that we get information into people's hands like myself. I'm willing to get up every day and contact 1 or 2 or 5 people and say, would you be willing to make this call to your counselor? The other thing is, I think getting that best information out there entails person-to-person contact. So if you want people to actually stop by and visit, that helps a lot, I must tell you. And so I know you're trying to have an open house in Farmington, but better is to go from, if you want names of people to go talk to about things they could do, I'd be happy to help on that part. And MP's request for candidates can't be more important. It's urgent. And one of the things we saw happen just down the road here in Aztec, they really had a revolution. They tossed out their city council, and they have had a lot of positive changes because they got active. And so I think the same is possible here. Get us the information we need that would be effective.
I think that's a great point. And yeah, we will definitely work on that and get that information out to you and others who want to kind of be active volunteers and members, reaching out and contacting all of our political representatives, for sure. Great idea.
Yeah, and that's bringing up next week on Wednesday from 5 to 6 or 7. We're we're having green drinks or an open house, you can call it, at our Farmington office out in the courtyard. So for those of you, a lot of you are from Farmington, please come by. We'd love to see you in person. And we're getting close to the end here, but thank you guys so much for coming. And thank you, Emily, Mike, Gordon, Gloria, everybody for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all. I really appreciated meeting you, albeit online, and it's been great to see some faces here.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll see you
Thanks,
next
Gloria.
week.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you,
to see you,
Gordon.
Gordon.